Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully everyone is feeling well and healthy. We're having our 15th session of the Green Economy Network. I know the vast majority of you have been here multiple times, so most of this not new to anyone, but for those of you joining us for the first time, I just want to make sure that you know that this is very much supposed to be a collaborative effort. We look forward to hearing all of your suggestions, what you want to see in this space. For those of you in working groups, what you want to see in the working groups, anything that is going to move our work forward. As always, if you have questions or comments, or hopefully not, but if you have any tech trouble, let us know in the chat. If you're having tech trouble and can't connect, of course, try to email us if you can. Zoom updates might be helpful, especially for some of the things that we do in breakout rooms. Some of the more recent Zoom updates make a difference. And as always, feel free to reach out to me afterwards. Happy to chat over email or set up a call. Moving on from that, today we're going to talk about actually a whole lot of stuff, which is exciting. So hopefully by the end of this, everyone's going to be familiar with and know what's happening vis-a-vis cleanup core updates, changes, potential changes, the effort to get another 1 million trees in New York City, some city council hearing updates, especially about the Economic Development Committee, affirm, or at least begin to affirm policy proposal revisions that we've been working on for a while together since December. And we are going to start delving into the process of creating a logic model for the network and what a logic model is and why anyone should have one and how we build one. So some of you already got a sneak peek about what this process is this week. And for those of you who've never worked in logic model before, don't worry. Carrie is excellent at explaining what these are and how they work. So it's going to be great. Today's agenda pretty much going to be exactly what I just laid out. Not going to go into too much about that. Before we go into all of the things I just discussed, we're going to go super briefly into peer sharing. I think last time we called it a networking question. And the question, which I'll put in the chat, is what is changing for you personally or in your work now that restrictions have lifted and things are opening up? And we are going to just briefly go in breakout rooms, and this will also be a helpful test to make sure that everyone is easily able to get into breakout rooms for our main part later when we're doing the presentation and design session. So we can try that now, unless Carrie, you wanted to give any other pre-updates about launch models or anything else?
No, I think let's have people just get warmed up, chat a little bit, and then we'll come back and proceed with the rest of the agenda.
Great. Let me see if I can open these rooms and go. And hello to everyone else. If you don't want to, can't join the room, happy to have you stay here with us. Cool kids in the back of the bus. And feel free to chat in this space in terms of answers to that question.
I'm looking, David, for that particular question, which I saw in the chat pop in, but it disappeared. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So the question is, what is changing for you personally or in your work now that restrictions have lifted and things are opening up? Which could be something completely new, could be going back to something from 2019.
Interesting. I'm going to say that for me, I've been operating sort of in the same concept of with caution and treading lightly. I think I'm enjoying more engagement of seeing more people be a bit more active and in the world, a bit more free, living life a little bit more happily for certain situations. As far as work wise, we've continued to work sort of hybrid, remotely and at the office, but we continue to operate with caution. How's it been on your end?
Same, sticking to hybrid approach for now, keeping in place our various COVID protocols. I personally never stopped masking indoors, and I haven't stopped yet.
And from what I hear, most places do continue in the workplace.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how different things are by the end of this month, though.
So did you want us to say things or to?
Yes, definitely.
Well, let
What's
me just
changing?
say, this is Dave from AEA, and we're in the process actually of thinking, how should we change? There are many of us who most of the time have been coming into the office for many months, actually. But many have not. So we've got this mix. And so really, how do we optimize? I think the mayor's message about returning to work and returning to the businesses and going out to getting the economy going again. I happen to respect that concept. And I'm trying to begin to live it as fully as possible and begin to make plans, but with the input of everybody in the organization about how best to implement it. But I think we are at a new stage. But being cautious is advisable.
As many of you probably know, I retired at the end of last year from Solar One, and that's been its own little personal change for me, which has been absolutely wonderful. And I highly recommend it to everybody if you get the chance. But the last thing I did before I left Solar One was to actually get a lease together. We had left our space in Manhattan in September of 2020. Because our lease was up. And so we found new space in Long Island City. We're going to consolidate all of our workforce training operations as well as our offices, and all of our programs are going to be under one roof in Long Island City. And I was told yesterday that they just actually got the go-ahead to start to occupy the space. So they're all going to be going back to work in Long Island City in brand new offices. As it's actually quite stunning.
Where in Island City? I live there.
What's the address?
It's right across the street from the Department of Education in Con Ed's
Really?
training center.
That's great.
I don't know the exact address on the.
Yeah, that's
But
great.
It's right there. Beautiful views of the river and the city.
Yeah.
It's great. So they're all going to be moving back in there probably in the next month or so and facing exactly the questions you raised, Dave. How do you do this in this new world?
Right.
But the timing could not have been better.
But I used to live about 4 blocks from there. It's a wonderful area.
Yep. And the new executive director lives about a 9-minute bike ride away. So he's pretty jazzed about it too.
Great.
That's great, Chris. I'll have to come visit.
Yeah, they haven't there. I'm sure they'll have some sort of opening. I haven't seen it yet either. And I think it's going to be, I'm sure they'll do some sort of opening in the spring is my guess.
Chris, did you skip hanging out with all of us?
Well, what do you mean?
The strategy breakout group had our breakout session, but you weren't in it.
Yes, he hung out with us.
Yeah, it was.
The other cool kids over here. Well, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I know, as always, I feel like every breakout group ever have, it was too short, but don't worry, we're going to go back later and get the other conversation about the Logicana process. For now, we're going to go over to Jen, who is going to talk to us about City Cleanup Corps, changes, possible future plans, and more. Oh, still on mute, Jen.
Sorry, I unmuted and then it said the host muted me. So now I'm unmuted again. Hi, everybody. So this is not a very big or exciting update, but we thought it was important for everyone to just, many of us in the Green Economy Network received City Cleanup Corps money in our FY22 budget. And so like Hope, many of you are probably starting to plan for your FY23 budgeting and want to figure out if you should be counting on renewed City Cleanup Corps money. And so we had just engaged with some of our city council folks and the mayor's office of workforce development staff. And so I have no certain information, but the most recent information, which was as of February 17th that we got, was that if there is continued funding, which they're unsure of yet, it would be likely less than the total pot of City Cleanup Corps money was in FY22, because that total pot was like 220 million for Cleanup Corps, and they're not putting 220 million for Cleanup Corps in the FY23 budget. But according to both the city council folks we spoke to and the mayor's office of workforce development folks we spoke to, people are pushing for it and advocating for it. And we just need to keep our eye on the release of both the preliminary and the executive budgets to figure out in what formal sense it's going to be included. So that's the information that we had, that just wanted to share with other people who were wondering or worrying. And also wanted to just put it out there if anyone else has any intel on it that they could share with the group.
And while people are sharing that, I'm going to drop in the chat link to the full preliminary budget function analysis. That's the over 500-page document that gives every little figure on every little program and department for anyone who wants to know, okay, what's the preemptive or preliminary number look like for this particular section that I'm interested in.
Great. And if no one has any other information to share on Cleanup Corps, the only thing, since I have the microphone right now, I just wanted to put out there that Hope is currently involved in a project. I think we've mentioned it on Green Economy Network calls before. We're involved in a project called the Equitable Commute project. And we along with several other partners have a potentially $7 million grant pending with NICE, or in phase 1 of NYSERDA. And obviously we have to apply for phase 2, but to get 5,000 e-bikes and e-scooters into the hands of essential workers in New York City over the next several years. And so if anyone is super interested in that project and getting e-bikes and e-scooters into the hands of essential workers that have graduated from your programs or your own staff and own team, please just send me a note either in the chat or on my email, and I can loop you in, because we're going to be over the next couple of months doing a lot of community planning and soliciting community input and creating lists of people who are interested. And so would love to involve anyone and everyone from the Green Economy Network who is interested. So, so ping me on that and I will turn it back to you, David.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jen. Next, we're going to hear from Anel from Green City Force, who's going to give us some information and updates about the campaign for 1 million more trees in New York City. Most of you probably already heard about the successful campaign years ago for 1 million trees in New York. This was replicated in a bunch of other cities as well. So this is take 2.
Yeah, so this is a continuation. So the 1 million more trees is actually the first ever initiative where all borough presidents have come together. It's nonpartisan. They're come together to address some of the challenges from the previous initiative. So for the first time around, it was very ambitious, and there were tons of lessons learned, two of which were around equity, making sure that when we talk about strengthening the city's urban tree canopy, that we are paying very careful attention to where we're planting trees. And some of those challenges arose because of needed improvement in coordination across different city agencies. So bureaucracy was a challenge. And another kind of one of the other big opportunities that are great connections and to keep folks within Gen up to date is around workforce development. So Green City Force is a part of Forest for All. And as you all know, we have a great partnership with NYCHA. So because we are navigating these two spaces, when it came to the workforce development opportunities within A Million More Trees, we were really excited to join in just highlighting the importance and like kicking off this initiative. There was a press conference on Valentine's Day with the Forest for All Coalition, which we will share, and Dave just shared information through the chat. We are talking about what are the long-term opportunities that exist and can be created more intentionally within the city around strengthening the urban tree canopy. It's not just about the effects on the environment, like the heat island effect, and making sure that where we place trees, we're cognizant of the impact in terms of making sure our communities are not being overheated and overlooked. But as we're, looking at the canopy, there's what we can do now, and then there's a long-term maintenance. So it's really exciting to have a much more holistic conversation on what can happen this next go around. We would love to share more information following, like I said, this meeting around those who might be interested in joining the Forest for All coalition. There is also a petition, or like a letter of support, not petition, but a letter of support, that if you are interested in underscoring the importance of having 1 million more trees, that you can sign and be a part of that, and just kind of, like I said, underscore how important this is, not only, again, environmentally, but also there's some really great green jobs that could come out of this initiative, and also some inroads within, we hope, fingers crossed, conversations around civil service titles and educational opportunities through CUNY on urban forestry. So it's really kind of an opportunity to take a holistic look on addressing this issue. And with the support of all borough presidents, we're really excited that the city will come together, and there'll be, additional jobs out there that we can tap into.
Excellent. Thank you, Anel. And one of our last big updates will come from Kathleen, who's going to tell us about the city's economic development committee. I totally mixed up the terms. Sorry, Kathleen.
That's it. Hey, everyone. Our update here is that, with the new administration, there's luckily a renewed, continued focus on economic and workforce development, right? We have Maria Torres Springer, who is now our deputy mayor for economic and workforce development. So she has workforce development in her title. And there is going to be a hearing on March 21st at 1 p.m. And this is the Committee on Economic Development, chaired by our new council member, Amanda Farias, I think is how you pronounce her name. For those of you who might remember, Amanda, now council member, worked at CWE for a time, for example. So she is familiar with our world and certainly a champion. And it's jointly with the Committee on Oversight and Investigations, which is chaired by, again, council member Gail Brewer, former Manhattan Borough President, former council member before that. So we want to think about, as our network, preparing for that hearing, and also wanted to put it out in terms of you preparing from your own organization in terms of the topic, which is the city's evolving workforce development plans in the wake of the pandemic. So it's all that we've talked about here in terms of green jobs are the answer for the recovery, and who is having access to this work and what the opportunities are. So think about that for your own organization, and then we will continue to provide updates as we hear from them, as we hear of them, and also think about how we are preparing to give testimony at the hearing on the part of the network.
Thanks, Kathleen. And
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that everyone got the message that this will be a remote/virtual hearing, making it very easy for everyone to attend. The actual details of how to attend have not yet been released, but if you go to the link that I shared, that first link that I shared, the details will be there once they're released. And with that, we will go into our next section, talking about some of the updates to the policy proposals. I get the link from my go. So for most of you, you probably already heard about all this, or actually seen, read the proposals, or been on the task force that was involved in these. But quick recap, back in November, we as network formed a task force, mostly populated by members of the Policy and Advocacy Working Group, unsurprisingly, to work on creating policy proposals that end up being entirely focused on New York City, with the several overlapping goals and requirements that we put upon ourselves, namely that they should be feasible in all senses. They should be some proposals that could be enacted, whether that meant legislatively or through executive action in 2022, and that they should be ones that both have an environmental focus and a workforce development focus. So from the huge possible range, we narrowed this down to 7 proposals covering a wide gamut, and we got those into then Mayor-elect Adams' transition team by mid-December. And then we decided to take these and make them even better once we got past that sort of super rush deadline, and figure out how we can tweak it. We got lots of great feedback from people about how to strengthen, tweak various proposals. And I've been working on modifying those, taking into account everyone's feedback, mostly not mutually exclusive. There were some little parts that are mutually exclusive. So I'm not going to go through all this today. Obviously, we've got the link now. We'll send this out afterwards and people can check it out. But just want to give some high-level updates about some of the big kinds of things that were changed. And this includes, not limited to, the NYCHA recycling focus, which had come about because then not even Mayor-elect candidate Adams, in his he released a series of papers about these are my proposals for this area, workforce development, a bunch of different things. One of the areas was about environmental proposals, and he proposed a very big NYCHA recycling push. So obviously anything where the mayor has already said we should do this is an area where presumably it's easier to get traction on that, but de-emphasize the recycling part and emphasize more the sustainability part and the resiliency part. Resiliency being, of course, a big thing in general, but for those of you who were in the city post-Sandy, read a lot about the issues that many NYCHA residents had just in terms of physically getting access to things after buildings were flooded, lost power, etc. I added calling it a preamble, but can call it or like a simplified version of each proposal describing high level what's involved. So it's something that's to make it easier for the people who are not already deep into a particular area of policy to quickly see what this means and why it matters. I tried to, on the resiliency front, broaden the nature of resiliency being discussed. The first version focused a lot on CSO, combined sewage overflow, which is very important in terms of pollution, in terms of flooding, but really to give more context about what that means in terms of flooding and in other forms of resiliency, in terms of, say, electrical storage, in terms of what resiliency means for physical safety, whether it's from heat, whether it's the ability to get to where one needs to be despite floods, despite power loss. There were a number of people who during our previous session talking about this, we were talking about the training cost per person. So those amounts were increased. Overall, this gave more context on workforce development throughout the proposals. The local law and 97 policies were modified. That's one of the areas where there's most substantial feedback in terms of not just the numbers, but the overall structure of the policies. And last big high-level part, the policies involved spending public funds on private property, like green roof grants or loans to make the city's many privately owned buildings be more environmentally friendly in that way. Removed just because it turns out that is extremely challenging to do public funds on private goods in that way. And then there are many other little changes, but we'll discuss those at some other point. Just want to share this with you. Strategy group is going to look at these, policy analysis is going to look at these. And then at one of our next meetings, we can discuss how we can actually use these, whether that means collectively use them, whether it's through a website, blog posts, letters to the editor, etc., or how individual groups might want to use this as part of their own advocacy or as a standalone pitch to make some of these proposals happen this year. So check that out. We will talk about that more another time. For now, in this time, I want to go straight to the next part of our agenda where Carrie is going to.
Time for questions. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Let's take a few questions if we have time.
Extra times. We actually have a good amount of extra time. So questions on anything, any of the updates, the policy proposals, the council hearing, the million more trees, cleanup core. Feel free to unmute or raise your hand.
Yeah, hey, it's Mike Conway from Stacks and Jewels. Just had a question about that last piece around the challenges of, public funds for privately owned buildings. Is that the same or situation if it's a nonprofit that owns their facility, or does it change that?
So to my knowledge, it doesn't matter if it's a nonprofit or just some random person who owns a building. It's more about the legal structure. But that said, I'm certain that there's some additional context there that would be useful. If anyone here has some additional insight into the nuances of this and would like to share, that'd be excellent.
I can take a stab at it. I am definitely not an expert in this sort of particular legal matter, but New York State Constitution prohibits using tax funds for what they call gifts. And so if you're sort of putting a green roof on somebody's house or something like that, that's considered a gift. There are kind of ways around it, but it typically involves a pretty lengthy legal process to say that there's a public benefit to doing that work on private property. and then also set out very specific and typically rigid rules around who is eligible for that benefit. There are other ways around it, like EDC has slightly different rules in terms of how they spend money. Some of the other city affiliated nonprofits also have slightly different rules. It's complicated and I don't fully understand it, but it can be very challenging to spend money on private property, which is often why when there are programs like the Green Roof grant program, typically requires a lot of hoops that you have to jump through to be able to get around these sort of unconstitutional gift issues. If anyone else knows more about unconstitutional gifts, please jump in.
Thank you, Ellie. Does anyone know more about unconstitutional gifts and wants to jump in? Okay, then we will get back to that and another one. Questions about any of the other items? Climate Corps, million more trees, economic development, policies. Okay. If anyone thinks of questions, because of course we've just thrown a ton of information about a lot of different things at everyone. Again, feel free to send questions. If you have questions for anyone specific, great. If you have general questions, can send them to Carrie and me, and we will get them to the people who are most well-informed and try to get answers for everyone. And if you have a question about something, it's a good bet that a dozen other people here have a similar question. So please share out anything that you have. Okay. Carrie, do you want to take us away?
Yes, if you are
share.
able to share the deck. Well, before you do that though, we're going to dive into learning a little bit about logic models and how to create them and a fun process for creating them. But I'd love to see show of hands, raise hand using the reactions or just raise your hand on the screen. Who has built a logic model before or has some understanding of the process of building a logic model? Raise hands, thumbs up. Great, some people have experience here. Let me scan through. All right, good. A good couple of handfuls. That's excellent. So that makes my job a little easier and yours, and hopefully gets you excited for doing a process that you know leads to outcomes. So Dave, if you want to start sharing the screen, and while you get that ready, and let me know if you can, I could try and share mine while I present.
I'm just gonna get this in presenter mode.
Okay, great. So developing a roadmap for what we want to achieve, for achieving a partnership's vision, it's important, obviously, for many reasons, right? I think some of the main ones include the ability to visualize your work plan and provide a work plan for all of the people involved, not just the people who create the logic model. And Dave, you could go to the next slide. It also gives us language. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, that's fine. Just leave it there. It gives us language to convey what our network is, what impact we want to have, and how we will do it. It's a process that can be broken down into steps, and developing a logic model can be manageable. And I think it's really important. The process that we're going to go through today will keep it more jargon free. I know, our field and our work tends to be really jargony, and we're going to try hard to remove that from the process. And earlier this week, the strategy working group started this process, and today we're all going to learn about it and begin building the Green Economy Network's logic model. And we'll do it by work group, and the strategy group will just we'll move forward with where they are, and we'll all be starting. So we have 2 examples of logic models. This is one of them. And this is the Tenderloin Health Improvement Partnership logic model. And it was a way for them to visualize how they work collectively with the community partners and other stakeholders to improve the health of Tenderloin residents. So you see, like, at the end is probably their vision or their ultimate impact that they want to achieve. Next slide. So this is, the logic model, the first logic model is probably the format that most people are used to seeing. This is a different one, and I decided to share this one because it's fun and it's different, and you could look at this in a different way. And this one was from the National Endowment for the Arts, and they developed this for their creative placemaking grants program, and they called it Our Town, and they wanted it to really give that feeling of like the collective. And it promotes their key here. You see, like, where the bullseye is, I know it's small, sorry if your screen is small. It's not important to read the details of it, but it's more about how they designed it. And their goal is like their end result, their ultimate impact again here. And you see they use like a bullseye to indicate that. And they were working on strengthening the community by advancing their local, their physical, economic, and social outcomes. So, these are just examples of logic models that other people have found effective in ways of communicating what a partnership does. But it's also important to think about that no other logic model can really serve as a template for the Green Economy Network and what we want to do. Everything is unique. The forces of change and other important details for each effort is going to be different. So we need to take into account the intricacies of New York City, of who we are and what we do. So next slide, please. So today, it's the process that we have it's probably a 10-step process. I'm guessing that we'll get through the first 5 of these steps today, maybe. We should have a good amount of time in breakout rooms to do it. And on those logic models, you saw like the end thing was like their ultimate impact or their big goal. But it's very important, I think, for us to start with that end in mind before we build out all of the other things. So the first step, when you go into breakout rooms, and each room will have a facilitator that has a guide to walk through this, and we're going to have jam boards with everything set up. But the first step is really going to be like thinking about what is our future state. And we're going to be asking ourselves, if we really got it right, what does it look like? And I put on that jam board for everyone our vision statement, because that's it in like a very sort of grand way. That's our end goal. But we're going to also think about that in, really a more granular way for New York City. Like, we have this grand vision of sustainable access and sustainable jobs for all. But what's the ultimate impact here in New York doing that work? And then the next step, we're going to ask ourselves, who is being helped? Who are we serving through this partnership? And I think after we establish like this end in mind, our vision, our future state, we'll think about who's the target population, the people that we serve, and who will benefit from our work in the community and across the city. And then we will move to the next step, thinking about what needs to change. And these are really the long-term outcomes, big picture. If you're really like changing the rules, changing the game, think about policy changes. We just talked about the policy proposals. Those are really like long-term goals. We'll put them out there and work with the administration to understand and budget for things like that. But that's a long-term outcome of our work. So that's what we'll be thinking about in the third step. And then the fourth step is to think about what are the behavior changes that need to happen in order to accomplish our vision. Who would change and how? Who's going to change to get to where we want to be? Think about the behaviors and actions that will lead to the changes, asking things like, what changes would you expect to see in those we serve, or how what will the people we serve do differently as a result of our work? And then maybe we'll just get through that in our breakouts. You know, I want each of you to spend a lot of time thinking about it and brainstorming ideas and discussing. If we get to step 5, great. And that step 5 is more of our immediate outcomes, and like, what are the first changes that you expect? What needs to happen right away in order for us to do this work, in order for the network to operate together? And think about, you know, changes in knowledge, beliefs, attitudes that you would see both in our own organizations and in the groups that we serve. And then, like I said, there's another 5 steps, but it's a lot, you know, so I don't want to go through the whole process now. We'll save that for a combination of working group meetings and our next meeting. And those of you who have worked on logic models, you know, you might be thinking ahead to the other things that you know go in there. But for this activity today, step by step, we'll just stay focused on those questions as you go into breakout rooms. And let me pause now just to see if you, and especially the folks who will be facilitating the conversation, have any questions about what the next step is.
Gaspar had a question about steps 3 and 4.
Great.
Yeah, Carrie, I put it in the chat. I'm wondering, I think I understand the difference between step 3 and 4. My take is that step 3 is more systemic changes, and 4 is kind of drilling down into like the individuals in the system, be it from specific programs or organizations, et cetera. Is that right? Or can you explain that further?
Yes, no, you're exactly right. The step 3, like thinking about what are the rules, what needs to change, changing the rules and the nature of the game, they are systemic changes. So it's, as a network, in order for us to achieve our vision, we will be asking ourselves, what are the types of system change that are important to reach that vision? And I think, you know, the question that we'll ask ourselves is, if we've reached our vision, what has changed in order to allow that? What in the system has changed? So you're exactly right. That's the difference. Step 3 is system, and step 4 is much more behaviors in ourselves, our agencies, and those we serve.
Yeah, step 3 is probably very much like what we were just talking about green roofs and public financing of private property. It's a big system change.
Exactly. Other questions before we head into the breakouts? And like I said, everything is, you know, laid out. Each slide has the heading, the question that you're addressing, and facilitators in each room have a guide. All right, I think there are no more questions. We could head into breakout rooms. If David, do you want to open up the rooms? A key takeaway, maybe one person from each room, if you could share like a key takeaway and maybe a next step if you got there, or if you have something in mind.
I'm happy to go for our group quickly. One thing that came out when we were talking about like I think it was the second slide we were working on about like, who will this help? just like the need for us as a green economy network to start being more reflective about like who's at the table and why aren't there participants and graduates at the table in this green economy network, and how do we start elevating those voices, and even the phrasing of like, who will this help? I don't know, the phrasing even like made us not go down that path for a while, but I think it's worth conversation. And then when we moved on to the next thing about changes, Chris Collins pointed out how one of the other examples we looked at, like split it between like changes on a systems level and changes on more like a local level. And we started talking about that also, like what changes would we like to see among kind of the way we all as members of the Green Economy Network work together and collaborate, and then what systems changes do we need to see. So there's lots of sticky notes on all our slides, but those were kind of two of the things that came up. If anyone else from the strategy group wants to add, feel free.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the importance of not losing sight of creating something new versus displacement, and efficiency, meaning fewer jobs for fewer people. So just keeping that top of mind as we think through a lot of these bigger picture issues.
Thanks, Chris. Thoughts from others? Policy advocacy group?
I will say that we spoke little and wrote much. Everyone was very focused. I just did a quick count of how many notes we added, and there were at least 56 notes. And yes, we were hardcore about this. I have not yet read through all of them to say what there were a disproportionate number talking about this or that, but I take it as a good sign that policy and advocacy is going to delve deep into this. Anyone else from P&A want to share anything?
All right, training wraparound. Who would like to share? Gaspar, are you still typing? All right, well, Diane, would you like to share for our group?
Well, the group really focused on a couple of things. We were able to get through to step 3. We talked about the people that we service and the our end goal, and how integrating and supporting funding for these projects to balance the scale of service that we do would encourage the success of our end goal. And anyone else have anything to add to that?
One thing I would say that seems to be a common thought. I mean, there's a lot of commonality across, obviously, who we serve, both on the job seeker side, the business side, unions, contractors, all of those. But the desire for some sort of system, some sort of platform, a digital platform, a single system that we can transparently and efficiently share information and resources across the network. That was one big theme, and another big theme also is the concept that comes up a lot in collaboration is, who's paying for collaboration, and a systems change is needed for that to be funded at a level that is sustainable. And I think that leaves the employer partnership group. Where are EP people? Did they leave?
Jennifer, do you want to report back? I'm really bad at summarizing. Or anyone else from the group? As I wrote in the chat, we took 73 notes, so there was a lot of work done.
I know, I sort of feel like Dave's group, we took so many notes, I'm not even sure how quite to summarize. But I think that one of the key takeaways for us that came up was sort of not unlike one of the other groups, that how we are branding green jobs is problematic, and we're sort of tripping ourselves up by the very way that we talk about green jobs, and also sort of a need for a lack of clarity and a shared common sort of lexicon to be used with employers and government stakeholders and us and all of us who sort of make up this network that would help, I think, with some of those opacity issues. If anybody wants to add to that, please do.
All right. Final thoughts? Dave, you want to summarize what to expect next? Are you muted? I don't see you.
We're going to take all these many notes and start synthesizing them. Obviously, we encourage people to continue adding any notes that they didn't get to yet. As mentioned in our group, we had so many pages of questions that expect most people probably aren't going to get past the first half of the questions in any meaningful way. We're going to work on this, continuing this logic model process in one of our next sessions. Of course, if any working group wants to continue working on this and during one of their own sessions, great. Otherwise, since I know we are just about out of time and some people have to run, we are going to send a follow-up out to everyone with everything that we covered today, all the updates, the policies, how to get more involved. Just send the link to register for the next meeting. We will, of course, include that in the next one. And most importantly, if anyone has suggestions for the next meeting or any of the meetings after that about what they want to use this learning space to do, please share that with us. Otherwise, just want to thank you all for joining today and sharing your input. And if you have any questions about Jamboards, logic models, Million Trees initiatives, anything else, please send them to Carrie, me, Jen, and Nell, Kathleen, anyone else who is involved, and we will try to get answers to you and to everyone else, because any question you have, someone else probably has same or similar question.
All right.
Carrie, last items.
No, just thanks everyone. I hope that logic modeling was fun. It sounds like it was productive, so excited about that. We'll pull everything together that's on the Jamboards and share back. Have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend.